can hear me.
Smell my burn pile.
Not if you can't hear me.
The only reason this connects to that is because you have it set up to receive.
The old burn pile.
Either or one of each. Liddy's donated the sheet cakes. Liddy's
It's now 6:30. I'm going to call the Public Works and Economic meeting to order. We have 3 items to discuss tonight. Members are Mrs. Ramos, Mr. Pace, and myself. The first thing we're going to discuss tonight is one we had on our last meeting. We're going to get some answers today. Is proposed resolution 14, the Nature Works grant. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. McAbear to.
Sure.
If he's got some costs and stuff on that.
Yeah, sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, sorry about that.
This is involving the skate park. Isn't it?
Trying to, okay. Did everyone receive the photos that was sent, I believe, middle of last week? So what we're gonna try to go out and do is, I don't think anybody, well, let's go back. Last year, we allocated, we did just over $8,000 worth of repairs last year through Master Capital, through the Parks Department. I had went back throughout the years and didn't see anyone that was doing anything as far as for repairs or any such work down there, to my knowledge. Maybe someone has did something, but I think since it's been there, I don't know, there's been a whole lot of stuff going on. So, we reached out to Omega, try to ask them kind of what's going on and what's out there for grants. Was told that they, you know, we want to do something with the skate park. So we went to Benchmark Construction, and the sweet spot for the grant is $35,000. So with that $35,000, naturally doing the math, everyone knows that the match would be $87.50. Now with that, we have a GoFundMe page that was started by a local gal that we have $6,200 in that. So that remains, the remaining there would be $2,550 would be from the city's Master Capital through the park. So anytime I believe that you can do $35,000 worth of work for $2,550, it's a great opportunity there. And again, that's just some of the photos. With that, all that railing that you see, if you could see some of that, everything that needs repaired is going to be repaired as far as the pictures. And the entire railing is flimsy at best. So all that railing that's going around it will be replaced, and then everything else will be patched up. Last year, and I'm going to probably not get the name right, but that's like hurricane board or something that's on that, what they slide on. And it's expensive, but that needs, there's gaps in it, so there's been some shrinkage there. Try to replace some of that also, that they say that their boards are getting stuck on. So again, there's much needed work, and I don't think that's been maintained adequately over the last 25 years. So it's needed, as you can see from the pictures.
And Mr. McAbear, you said probably our last meeting we had to have this done before the end of the month. Is that correct? Is that?
I believe, yes,
Yeah,
we
so
do
you'd
on
want,
this one.
if we were to act on it, we would want to get it on tonight's agenda and passed on first
Yeah.
reading.
Yes, please.
And what else was I going to say? Last meeting she was pretty clear on seeing what kind of an asset it is for the city. And I think everybody was kind of in agreement that,
Yeah.
especially like you're saying, $35,000 worth of work we're getting for $2,500.
Yeah, 2550.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Any questions from committee? Mrs. Ramos?
I was just curious, just for clarification for myself. You said we allocated 8,000 last year, but it wasn't used, or
Yes, it was.
it was used?
Yes.
Who is responsible to maintain? the
Parks Department.
Parks Department.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, Mr. Pace? Anybody else on council have any questions for?
What is the security down there? I mean, are we not allowed to have cameras down there? I mean, all the vandalism that goes on, are we allowed to,
I can tell you this, some of that, like the tagging stuff, but other than that, we don't get, I've checked with the chief before as far as vandalism.
so it's just only wear and tear?
That is, yeah, that stuff is wear and tear. That's a marine grade plywood but it's laid in water and it just slowly will soak it up no matter what it is. If it was regular plywood, I don't know what we'd be doing, probably demoing the place. But it is marine grade plywood, but just over time. Yeah, it's actually, well, like, then I've spoke with a bunch of people too, and they love it, and I don't think, there's a whole lot of policing themselves down there.
Yeah,
Believe
the
it or
young
not.
men, a lot of the young men was here at our last meeting, I mean, they spoke, like you said, they really try to police that
Yes.
place down, which is good, but, you know, we spend that kind of money, like I said, I think only once, I think Mr. Miller, Max Miller had put in some money at one time after we opened it, you know, for some repairs, but I think that's only one time, so.
Yeah, that would be, that's good, because I couldn't find anything, and I'm glad that you did, so. And like I say, this will get us started down, I think, a good path of getting there and then trying to maintain it through, you know, maybe 5,000 to 8,000 in for a couple more years after that. But this will address the major problems, answer some minor ones too, just to keep us moving in the right direction.
See no more questions, any action taken on proposed resolution 14 today? Mrs. Robbins?
I move that, we put resolution 14, 2022 on the agenda tonight.
Okay, I have a second. Mr. Pace, and we'll take a vote. Mrs. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Pace?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes also. Okay, the next one is the Puritan Laundry, possible property donation. I'm gonna turn this one over to Mr. McAbeer also to speak on.
Sure. I think we may have spoke about the purchase of all this property and the land donation from the Hickses. But what this has to do with now is, the parcel 243 6th Street Southwest. Once we got the paperwork signed and it was ours, Josh, that was just the building and zoning code commissioner, hey, look out, let's get some grants, let's try to get this tore down and let's get us down to just dirt, okay? So it goes out and there's round 2 of Brownfield, through the Ohio Department of Development, there's a round 2 that's available, okay, for Tuscarawas County. He starts down the path of filling out the application, and then after 3 or 4 phone calls, he notices there's still $300,000 for Tuscarawas County on one, so on
In the first round.
on the first round of
Of
funding.
grants.
So the key thing is, on the first round of funding, it's 100% paid for. The second round of funding is 75%. So, just the quotes that we've had have been right around $125,000 to tear everything down and put everything back to where it's just grass, a green space, and go from there. So, the math with that puts us at just under $32,000 if we go with round 2 of funding. Now, if no one goes out and tries to get this 300,000, first come, first serve on this round 1 funding. So, part of the grant application that Ohio Department of Development wants is this piece of legislation saying that City of New Philly recognizes and taking this in as far as this address and that parcel number. So that's the key. If we can get it in, again, we'll save $32,000. If we don't get it, and then we have to try to look for round 2 money at a later date. You know, we'll go right out to round 2 if we don't get this. But there was only one applicant for Tuscarawas County, and that was in Newcomerstown, and they got funded to over $500,000 to tear something down. So if we'd have if we'd acquired this property prior to it, we'd be having the funding now, but we didn't. So now we're trying to get this moving again quickly, which I apologize, but again, it just came around the way it did. We didn't receive this property until now. Again, to do it all, just over $125,000. That leaves us $31,900 be what we'd owe if we got to stick with round 2. Round 1 of funding, it's 100% paid for. bought and paid for, leveled down, grass, all the blacktop, everything's out of there, and we're back to just green space. So, that's what we're trying to do. That is the short version of it. There's been a lot of phone calls and phone tags through, Ohio Department of Development, but, Josh has been the lead on this, and, I think he's did a great job. As soon as he saw that round one, he called right away and had through a couple phone calls, got the answer, what we wanted, we felt. Again, if we can get this, that still puts 180,000 roughly out there for someone else to get. So, you know, there's 300 there, we'd love to have the 100, it's 127,600 is the actual quote to do that. So, that is the Cliff Note version of it.
So free money, hopefully, if not, then 25%.
Right.
If we don't get the
And I would
round
come back for that and let everybody know
So
that,
this
you
one,
know,
the one we're going for right now, 17, no cost to the city.
no cost.
Any questions from committee?
So 17 is accepting the property donation, and it says accepting the property donation.
Yes, and then that, because, and the only reason we need that is that's part of the grant application
Showing
to
that
go
we did
into
Okay.
that.
accept it, yeah.
Yeah. This only has to be slid into his packet of information, has to go,
And if we don't get round one,
He'll come back, then we'll.
yeah, and yeah,
big for the 25.
Right, so is there a resolution for the grant application?
yes.
That's 18?
Uh,
No, that's a
resolution
stormwater.
seven.
That's a stormwater, yeah, it's 17.
It's part of the
17.
17. Or that gives them the opportunity to apply for the grant.
That's not in there.
He won't apply for round two unless he comes back to us.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because it would require money from the city.
Anybody on council have any questions? No? Administration, or, no? Or yes? Okay, seeing none, any action to be taken on proposed, resolution 17?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
sorry. If we could also, I'm asking if we could also get this passed tonight.
You need this one passed
Yes,
right
I'm
away
sorry,
too?
I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I forgot to ask you, I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to move resolution number 17, 2022 to tonight's agenda and pass on first reading.
Okay, I got a first by Mr. Pace, anybody have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mrs. Ramos, and we'll take a vote. Mr. Pace?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes also. All right, the third item we had tonight is proposed resolution 18 for the stormwater. I'm gonna turn this one over to Mr. McAbeer also.
Macabere Show.
We're gonna be working together a lot on public works, I think.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's good.
If everyone recalls that, phase one, let's go over the whole project. Fourth Street and West High, and we all know when it floods there, what it does there. So this is to remedy that issue that we have. So round one, which we're gonna do this year, is 5-foot line, 5-foot, storm line that'll run through, it'll be a whole new line dedicated just to that area. That'll run, start at the Great All, at the river, come through Great All. It's gotta get me through Mill Avenue, underneath the underpass, go down to Bank Lane, go east, and come up Fourth Drive. And the key that we're doing phase one, I think everybody knows that I said that I'm staying ahead of the small cities paving that we're doing on Mill Avenue in 23. So I gotta get out of there and get through there in phase one, okay? So then what phase two will do, we'll make the connection at East High and Fourth Street. It heads south and then heads west on Front, and then down Fourth Drive to make that connection again, and we're done. This is just a grant that we typically go out to OPWC every year with something. We'll go out for $299,000 for this grant. The other funding, if we're lucky to award it, will come through the sewer fund. And again, and there's some catch basins in here, and then everything repaved also is what we'll go after. But this can be read for 3 readings. We don't typically go up to those meetings till October, early November, somewhere in that time. So no hurry on it, nothing, no rush on this particular grant.
On this particular grant, is there a city share?
Yes, the rest of it, this will probably be early estimates that phase 2 is roughly around $912,000, which it'll be done in '23, and we'll have
So we'll have time to
sewer
plan for
improvement
that.
funds, yeah.
And that would come out of its own account?
Yeah, the sewer.
It's not as a general fund?
No general fund
Just
money.
making it clear for the.
Yeah, no general fund money will be spent, it'll all come out of sewer funds.
Its own funded account.
Yeah.
Any questions on proposed resolution 18? Council? Yeah, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Oh,
Mr.
go
Chair.
ahead.
Oh, no, forget it, I'm using that for phase 1, forget it,
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Holland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McAbeer, are we going to, in conjunction with the construction, do something about the underpass?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we have just enough, we've already looked at it. We're gonna bring those up until, yes, the easy answer is yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Okay, anybody else on council, any comments? Other questions? How about administration? Yes? No, seeing no more questions, or do we have any action on proposed resolution 18?
I move that we add resolution 18, 2022 to the agenda.
Okay, and will be held for 3 readings. A second by Mr. Pace, and we'll take a vote. Mrs. Ramos?
Yes.
And Mr. Pace?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes also. Is there anything else to come before committee?
Yeah, Dan, just a point of clarification on the first resolution, what was it, 14?
Proposed resolution.
You didn't have it in there to pass on first reading, so
Well, we can,
Okay.
we have enough.
Okay.
Yep,
normally you put it on the thing and pass on first reading.
yeah, put it tonight. We mentioned that.
Okay.
Yep, we did. It should be in the minutes or the video.
And you can do that anytime anyway.
Anyways,
when
we
you bring
can,
up the
we don't have
resolution.
to, mention that. but, Anything else to come before committee? Motion to adjourn? Mr. Pace? Okay, we adjourned at 6:46. I could have almost got it at 6:45 when I was gonna start originally.
You did good for 3 of them.
Go ahead. You're on.
Good evening. I like to call the Safety, Health, and Service Committee to order. Members of the committee are Ms. May, Mr. Pace, an alternate is Ms. Ramos, and I'm chairman. The purpose of the committee meeting is to consider an appointment by Mayor Day to the City Health Board in ordinances 9, 20, 22, and 10, 2022. Just as a reminder, in the minutes of the April 25 council meeting, the law director briefly pointed out the purpose of the two ordinances that we're considering. I'd like to begin with the appointment by Mayor Day. He has appointed Assistant Fire Chief Matt Tharp to the City Health Board. And under Ohio Revised Code, the mayor makes those appointments, and it's up to council to confirm those appointments. And I would make the motion that this matter be sent to full council for a floor vote. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'm sorry?
I'll second.
Thank you. And a vote. Ms. May?
Yes.
Mr. Pace?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Ordinance 9, 2022. It's regarding fire damaged structures. We have a circumstance where structure owners, primarily residential properties, after they've had a substantial fire circumstance, will walk away from those structures, leaving them in a dangerous circumstance. Not only are they dangerous to the public, but they're a hazard from a health standpoint. And to tear those remaining structures down, to move them off the properties, falls back on the city and the taxpayer. This particular ordinance provides for the insurance company to retain 10% of the proceeds that would normally be paid to the homeowner and be put in escrow and held there until such time as either the structure is repaired, replaced, or the owner has the properties cleared. In the event that that does not happen, there would be 10% of that total insurance policy that the city would have access to for the purpose of tearing the remaining structure down and clearing the lot. In the event that that 10% does not cover the total cost of removing the structure and clearing the lot, it then falls back on the city as it normally would. Are there any questions? I know the fire chief is here, Chief Parrish. In the event that you have any questions of him, that he can address both of these ordinances. Any questions? Ms. Ramos?
Yeah, I have a couple, if you could somebody can clarify for me. Okay, so the first one is, are we talking about a total loss? You said that 10% to remove the structure, so that's total loss?
I think it would be considered total loss.
Or any fire damage at all?
In some cases, that perhaps would be true. Where there was significant smoke damage, as an example, along with some structural damage, and the homeowner decides they don't want to fool with it and just walk away. So, yes, it could be considered as partial damage.
So the 10% that goes into an escrow from the insurance company, so what if the homeowner, the insured, needs that money to make the repairs? that, because they would only be getting 90%.
If they demonstrate, correct me, chief, if I'm incorrect, if they demonstrate that they are in fact repairing the structure using that 90%, the 10% would then be allocated to them. But there would have to be a demonstration that they are in fact rebuilding, repairing whatever's necessary.
And according to this, the fire chief is a designated officer to make those determinations, right?
That's correct. That's actually by Ohio Revised Code.
Yeah, I printed off a copy of that, so
There you
I
go.
did read it. Okay, so what if, okay, so so whoever's in charge, I'm just wondering, I'm not against this, okay, I'm not saying that. But does this put the fire chief as the middleman, that would dispute with the insurance adjuster and the claims? You know how they set a price and then it says the fire chief has to approve or whatever, and how does that work?
I'm gonna call on the council president. I think perhaps he could answer that question.
In most cases, most homeowners' policies today have an ordinance and law endorsement added on their policy, so you get an extra percentage on top of what you've got the structure insured for. So, the insurance company's gonna look at the square footage of the house, okay, it's gonna cost this amount of money to build it back, and like I said, if you have debris removal, or this law coverage, there's extra costs there. If you have replacement cost endorsement on your home, most of those have 25, 50, or even more on top of what you got the house insured for. So there shouldn't be small issues that Jim would admit that the fire chief would get involved in as far as any disputes.
So you're saying most homeowners, I mean, we have a replacement cost on our.
And I bet you probably have a ordinance and law endorsement on your policy as well.
I haven't read the
Most
whole
agents do.
policy.
Okay, but I'm saying most agents today on a homeowner,
Particulars, but,
on homeowners, they do
Yeah.
sell those endorsements.
so there shouldn't be any conflict then with adding the other layer of,
Well,
Our fire
Mr.
chief.
President, correct me if I'm wrong, chief, but you're required by the Ohio Revised Code.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, it says up to more than $5,000 if the damage is more than
So
5,000.
insurance companies are used to working with that, so I mean, they get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is aimed at someone who's not going to do anything with the structure, and we have a structure that's badly damaged sitting here in the neighborhood, and the neighbors on both sides are complaining about
Mhm.
the smell and open, open doors, windows, things like that, emitting all that in the neighborhood. It's to help us fix that problem. It's not to impede someone that is going to fix their home after a fire. It's not to cause them any problems whatsoever. We don't get complaints about those. Where we get complaints is if there's a major fire to a structure and then they walk away from it and they don't do anything with it. That's where we get a lot of complaints, and rightly so. I wouldn't wanna live beside something that was damaged like that. So,
But this will cover everybody.
yeah, exactly.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Administration? Any of our visitors? Okay, is there any action to be taken on ordinance 9/2022?
Can this go for 3 readings?
Yes.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to add ordinance 9/2022 to next meeting's agenda and pass on third reading.
Okay, we have a motion, second. Mr. Pace, thank you.
Next.
And we'll vote, Ms. May?
Yes.
Mr. Pace?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Ordinance 10/2022 covers consumer-grade fireworks being discharged in the city, or within the city limits. The state of Ohio legislature recently passed legislation making it easier to purchase high-grade explosives, similar to the explosives that you'll see at our 4th of July celebration at Tuscarora Park. These are very volatile. They are high-grade explosives, and we, as a community, have controlled the discharge of those explosives for many years. This is a continuance of that. The state legislation gave us an opt-out provision, and in essence, that's what we're doing, is opting out of the state legislation to help keep our community safe. And again, if you have any questions, I believe the fire chief can answer those. Any questions? Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Mr. Selden, right?
Thank you, Mr. Hahn. Chief, could you, outside of the obvious, I think, dangers of having it, do you have any idea or any type of numbers that you could point to, or even just general concern on the closeness a lot of these neighborhoods are for shooting these off? It's not like it's just on the outskirts of town. It can really be anywhere. Do you have any input on that, or anything you've seen or anywhere across the state that's dealt with this?
Yeah, there's a lot of fire departments across the state that are asking the council to do the same thing that we're asking. You know, the state, prior to this, you could purchase fireworks in Ohio, but you just couldn't set them off. Well, then they changed that, you know, like Mr. Holland just said, that you can purchase and set them off anywhere in the state of Ohio. However, communities can opt out of that. And that's what we're asking to do. It keeps the law the same, basically. You know, it's just we have to opt out of it to keep it the same. I don't have data to support how many hundreds of thousands of dollars a year are worth of damage caused by fireworks, but it's high. I do know that. We have had more than one in our community. Hasn't been a tremendous problem simply because our police department knows that best they could, you know. And we also have a nice display during the 4th of July, and that seems to draw the crowd out there to watch those and not participate on their own. But they truly can almost have the same size diameter fireworks as we put on it at 4th of July. And those require 70 feet per inch in diameter of clearance away from structures or people. And so you see us out here at the 4th of July, we typically go a little further than that, about 240 feet away from where the fireworks are ignited. So, you know, if you look around town, it's pretty hard to find 240 feet between homes and structures.
Thank you.
Hopefully that helps. I'm sorry I didn't have it.
Oh, that's kind of just wanted more so in a nutshell what that looked like from your end and just other cities, municipalities across the state.
Okay, are there any further questions?
When it comes to the fireworks, I understand like bottle rockets and such like that, but does that include like even the smaller sparklers or the M80s and that there's plenty of in the neighborhood?
I'm not sure about M80s, I'm not sure about the capacity of the sparklers and bottle rockets are not included in that. However, you are still responsible if you kindle that.
Right.
If you kindle a bottle rocket, if you light a bottle rocket and it goes in your neighbor's house and catches their house on fire, then whoever lit that is responsible for that.
Which is good. Responsible. Try to prove it, but.
Are there any other questions?
Does this need to be passed?
I'm sorry?
Does this need to be passed this evening, or it can go through readings as well?
Go 3 readings?
I actually, because we're coming up on the Fourth of July, I would not mind if you're all in favor of passing it tonight so we can get that out of the road, and we can also communicate that to the public.
Okay. Is there any action to be taken?
I'll make a motion to add ordinance 10, 2022 to tonight's agenda and pass on first reading.
We have a motion
I'll
and a second. Thank you, Mr. Pace.
27.
And we'll vote. Ms. May?
Yes.
Mr. Pace?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Is there any other further business to be brought before the committee? Adjourn at 7:16.
Need a motion?
So moved. Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah.
All right, and are you ready, Amy?
I'm
Go
ready.
ahead. Okay, go right ahead.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, we'll, call to order the special contacts meeting. Members are myself, Cheryl Ramos and Jim Seldray, alternate is Dean Holland. Just have one quick thing on the agenda tonight, and that is ordinance 8, 2022. And basically, when they were doing the codified ordinance, for the housing codes, there was a typo and it was put in as 1334 and it should be 1335, and there are several, it goes 44 through, they're 44 through 59. So basically, the law director is just saying that that needs amended in the codified ordinances, and it was, just a typo.
Just to correct the numbers of the
Correct.
section.
Yeah. Any questions?
Do we need a motion to accept it? The
Yeah, we
adjustment?
would just have to, it can go 3 readings, that's fine.
I'd make a motion to put ordinance 8, 2022 on tonight's agenda for 3 readings with the amended language.
Okay, we'll take a vote.
I
Mr.
I
Severino?
second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll
A
second,
Sorry.
unless you already did.
No, I did not. I will take a vote. Mr. Sunray,
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos,
Yes.
and all of us also vote yes. We don't really have anything else on the agenda, so entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you.
7:18.
go.
This meeting of New Philadelphia City Council will now come to order. Would you please rise and remain standing for the invocation and pledge of allegiance? Father, we count it again as a privilege to gather as a city council to be about our business, to serve the citizens of New Philadelphia. We just pray for your guidance and directions on our decision-making this evening. Lord, last Thursday was the National Day of Prayer. We just thankful for all those who came into City Hall to pray for the city, all the city employees in the city of New Philadelphia. We just thank you that they took the time to pray for us. Father, we continually pray for all the citizens of New Philadelphia. We pray for their health and we pray for their safety. We continually pray for our policemen, our firemen, and all those who are serving in the military. We just ask this all in thy Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I also like to welcome all those who are watching our council meeting tonight. We welcome those folks and roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Present.
Mr. Lanzer.
Here?
Mrs. May.
Present.
Mr. Pace.
Here.
Mrs. Ramos.
Here.
Mr. Ricklick. Mr. Seldenwright.
Here.
Let it be known that Mr. Ricklick is excused from this evening's council meeting. Also, Mr. Popham, and we need to keep Mr. Popham in our prayers here the next few days. Everybody's had a chance to look at the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda? Mrs. May,
I'd like to add ordinance 8, 2022 to tonight's agenda.
do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Holland, thank you. Any discussion by council? Roll call.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenwright.
Yes.
Are there other additions to the agenda this evening? Mr. Holland,
Mr. President, I'd like to add ordinance 9, 2022 to tonight's agenda.
all right. Is there a second to that? Mrs. May, thank you. Any discussion by council, administration? Roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenwright.
Yes.
Any other additions to the agenda? Yes, Mr. Holland.
Mr. President, I'd like to add ordinance 10, 2022 to tonight's agenda.
All right, do I have a second to that? Mrs. May, thank you. Any discussion by council, administration? Roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenwright.
Yes.
Are there any other additions? Mr. Lanzer?
Yes, Mr. President, I have 3 of them, and since there was no objections when we had the meeting, I'd like to ask if we could add proposed resolution 14, proposed resolution 17, and proposed resolution 18 to tonight's agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Pace, any discussion by council, administration? Roll call.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenwright.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Selbright.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to add resolution 13, 2022 to tonight's agenda
All right. And pass on first reading.
and pass on first reading.
Do I have a second? Mr.
Second.
Holland? Okay, thank you. Any discussion by council, administration? Roll call.
Mr. Seldenwright.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, entertain a motion to approve the agenda tonight with all our additions.
So moved.
All right, Mr. Holland, need a second. Mr. Lanzer. Any discussion by council, administration? Roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenwright.
Yes.
Thank you. Minutes, everybody's had a chance to review the minutes from our last council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve. Mrs. May, thank you. Need a second? Mrs. Ramos, thank you. Roll call.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenwright.
Yes.
All right, Ms. Courtright, correspondence.
To Clerk of Council from Treasurer Tom Gerber, this is dated April 30th, 2022. This is the April 2022 deposits to the general account. To Council and Administration from Income Tax Administrator Vicki Daniels, dated May 4th, 2022. This is the April 2022 Income Tax Report. To President Kemp from Mayor Day, this is dated May 5th, 2022. This is an email titled Appointing Matt Tharp to fill the unexpired term of the New Philadelphia Board of Health. Mayor Day requested in the email that the issue be placed in the Safety, Health, and Service Committee. President Kemp asked Mr. Holland to take this issue into his committee. To President Kemp from Law Director Fate, dated May 6, 2022. This is an email titled, Please assign to the Public Works and Economic Development Committee with Resolution 18 as the attachment. President Kemp asked Mr. Lonzer to take this issue into his committee. To President Kemp from Law Director Fate, dated May 6, 2022. This is an email titled, Please assign to the Public Works and Economic Development Committee with Resolution 17 as the attachment. President Kemp asked Mr. Lonzer to take this issue into his committee. To Council Clerk from Treasurer Tom Gerber, dated May 9th, 2022. This is the Investment and Savings Report for April of 2022. And to Council and Administration from Mayor Day, dated May 9th, 2022, the Mayor's Report. And that concludes correspondence for this evening, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Ms. Courtwright. We'll move into our administrative reports. First up is Mayor Day.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members, fellow administrators, and guests. A couple things I want to highlight in the report that I sent you earlier today. The Tuscarawas County Board of Elections is going to be having a new home. The county commissioners have purchased parcels at 933 East High Avenue and on 10th Street Northeast on which to build a new office for the Board of Elections. This is property next to Penzo's Pizza on East High Avenue, the field that goes all the way back to Ray Avenue. According to the commissioners, the office building will be located on the East High Avenue parcel. The parcels behind it on 10th Street will be used for parking and for development of green space. They also give those parcels will also give the Board of Elections office room for future growth if it's needed. Service Director McAbeer and myself recently met with the commissioners to confirm the city's utilities available to the site. They asked if we would be interested in using the parcel that fronts Ray Avenue for green space, since floodplain regulations prohibit building construction on it. We welcome that idea, and we'll work with the county to perhaps develop the parcel into a small park. And also, now that the grass is firmly rooted, but I'll give you an update on that. The Parks Department has opened the 2 grass parking lots at the Southside Community Park. The first lot's located on the right side of the entrance road near the pollinator garden and the restroom. The second lot is located beside the dog park. The lots have a geogrid and grass base, which was required by Clean Ohio grant criteria. So I'm asking people to please utilize these parking areas during your visits to the park. But after I wrote this, I went down to the park, and both parking lots are mud and have been torn up. So I talked with Service Director McAbeer about it. Probably what we're going to have to do is have the contractor come back, reseed it, and fertilize it, cover it with straw, and close those 2 parking lots until the grass can regrow in. So, right now you can park there, but anticipate that they will be closed at some point over the next month or so until we get those repaired. And also, just want to remind people, Art on the Alley is coming up this Sunday, May 15th, from noon until 5 p.m. in the downtown alleyways. And don't forget to check out the murals in Artigan Alley, which is between West High Avenue and Allen Lane Southwest. That concludes my report. Any questions?
Any questions for the mayor? Yeah, it was a great event last year that they had here, the Art in the Alley, and
Yeah.
well attended, so come on down this Sunday. It'd be
Yeah, I
great.
believe about every vendor spot is filled. So it'll be another great event downtown.
Also, put a plug in for the Board of Elections, they need help. I know I work, so anybody feels the need to volunteer, they could use people at the Board of Elections to help during the election time. All right, move on to Service Director, Mr. McAbeer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. Real quick, just on the parking lots down there. That same geogrid we have at each boat ramp, and if you have it up by the big building that's down there behind the field, I forgot the field already, is it
A lot of work.
Eight, right
The
behind
field
eight,
yeah.
that's that same grid, and it's also down at the Carlisle ramp. For some reason, we're not sure yet what's the problem with down at Southside Park, but again, it does work great. Again, they're both spots there, and sure don't look like those ones down there do today, so. Anyways, okay. On April 19th, we were to open bids again on the Glen Drive project. Everybody remembers that's the second time we had to go out and rebid it because no one been on the first time. Unfortunately, no one been on the second time. So we reached out to most of every contractor that grabbed a bid packet. So they spoke about the fact that the budgetary number that's there wasn't going to fit the amount of project that we had. So we're going to change the scope of the project. We was going to do just over 1,100 feet. We will now do roughly 850 feet to that area. So from that then, was a change, a scope change, and then now we're going to have to move that the timeline and get a grant extension. So the mayor and I was on a conference call or a Zoom meeting with our local representatives, OBWC, and that was granted to us. So we'd hate to see $290,000 go away. So again, it was granted. So now the new timeline will be November. We will bid, December award, and these are both 22s, and then start construction February 23. We couldn't get out there any earlier because if we remember, that's all gonna be torn up and then you gotta get back blacktop. So that's the reason why no sense trying to get out there ahead of this and put up a time crunch, because then we may not have anybody bid on it again. So that's why now you got all the way till, now then with that timeline, June 30th will now be the substantial completion date, so on that project. So again, stay tuned for November. But again, we had to change that and shorten that up by 250 feet close to it. So we're hoping to fit within the budgetary things that we have here. But I will make sure that I update us when that time comes. Also, bids were received for on April 26th for the 2022 CV project, and contract was awarded to TR Snyder Construction with a bid of $99,549. And just to bring everybody up again to that is, we will be putting curbs 2nd Street Northwest from Poplar to Minnick, and then we'll run over to 2nd Street Northeast, and we'll run sidewalk from North Avenue Northeast to Minnick Avenue, and that'll be on the west side. And we're gonna see how things go, because with the grant, there's a little left there. We may end up putting sidewalk on North Avenue on that north side. I know that I spoke before, it's strange, but the north side is LMI eligible, the south side of 2nd Street there, of North Avenue is not. So we're gonna see how the project goes, and naturally I'll let everybody know updates if we have enough there to put sidewalks on that north side also. So I'll keep you up to date on that when that comes to that. If anybody's been out to Lakeview Avenue, we had a few things that still needed done out there. There was a crack in, I don't know the address right now, in one of the sidewalks. That was repaired Thursday, torn out, repaired, new piece of concrete set in the section there. And then the riprap, if we go across the crosswalk, go down the ramp on the stadium side, if anybody knew, that was all earth and tried to grow grass, and it just wasn't gonna work. So long story short, we got riprap in there, like the bigger stone, and it looks 100% better. If anybody could try to go out, just take a look at it, it looks a ton better, and it's not gonna wash away. Like, that's what was happening during the rain, so we were like, let's just do the riprap and be done with it. And the beauty of that is, we had a 5% cost, because we have the 95. We still had some money on the grant left, so we only paid 5% of the cost of that to get it done. That'll be in there forever, that riprap. You know, it doesn't move, it doesn't go anywhere. So, they had that yet, and then basically almost 100% of that still needed topsoil and seeded. So the last I was out there was about 1:30 this afternoon, and roughly about 85% of it was hydro-seeded and topsoil. Now, unless there was a problem, I would say we're done with that project, but I will let everybody know that I closed it out at the next council meeting. So it's coming together out there. They had to be done by the 15th, so they're gonna make that deadline. And it's glad to see that, again, come to a close. That was a much-needed project. I think it was a great project. Also, down at Schönbrunn Meadow Cemetery, if anybody's been down there, the new vinyl-coated black chain link fence was put along 20th Drive there. I think it looks fabulous. If anybody wants to go down there, take it, you know, we got the black picket out front. Now we just finished it off with the black chain link down through there. So I think it looks great. So
It does.
everybody go down there and take a look at that. Also, we'll talk about the Omega grant that, if we remember, we had to pass out on first reading that we went out for part of the Kent State Connector Trail. And thank you guys again for passing on first reading. Because I'm happy to say that we received that grant in the amount of $210,187. So with 80% of that being used for engineering and 20% to be used during construction. So real quick, on that project now, with grant money alone, we have $2,210,187 to go forward with that project. And that's our report. Any questions?
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Holland.
A question for our service director. One of the things that the mayor talked about in 2016 was to get the soapbox derby back to New Philadelphia. He's been successful in getting that accomplished. Is there any proposal, any plan to put a sidewalk up the hill from that lower portion of Wabash right at Lakeview? Going up the hill, is there any proposal?
We haven't looked at that yet, but that may be, I mean, we will, you know, we can, I mean, for sure.
I was there for the soapbox derby. Those that missed it, it was actually a very fun time.
Yeah.
But complaints about, hey, we need some help
Yeah, getting there,
in getting there, yes.
yeah. Yeah, we could look at it for sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Yes.
I'm Service Director, on Bluebell Drive,
Mhm.
with the property there, is there any movement on that?
The lot.
Oh, the lot, yeah,
sale.
thank you, Mr. Pace, for bringing that up. Talked with the representative Keynes, they're having, communication issues with the, properties to the east, as in like no contact. So we all talked about it, Thursday, and talked about trying to get them in contact with somebody, would be the next thing for us to do. So until they make a connection, I think the administrator's feeling is just kind of hold on so that it doesn't go in somebody's, in the wrong hands or, you know, anything like that. So, that's why it's not in front of you guys now to try to go out for sale. The thing that is done that I wanted done, it is split off. There's two different, well, not two different parcels, it fell in another parcel, so we always have, Maple Avenue is off of that parcel now, so if we ever wanna bring Maple through, we can. We're ready to sell it if it's time, but we just felt at this time, until we have, because you can't do anything just with that. They need some help with the other parcels that are around it, and they've had a challenge making that connection. So right now, there's nothing, there's no movement on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How many landowners are there today?
Just one.
Oh, just one.
They
Okay.
own the biggest part of that up there. There's like 7 parcels there. And the gentleman would like a couple of them. back through there, you know, so.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. McAbeer? All right, thank you. All right, Safety Director is excused from tonight's meeting. We'll move on to the Auditor, Mrs. Gundy.
Good evening, everyone. I did get the ARPA report sent in plenty of time. The ARPA money, if you remember, is what we got from the federal government for more COVID relief, stimulus package, that kind of thing. We have not gotten the second half of that yet. I expect it to come any time, so I'll let you know when that happens.
Any
That's all I
questions?
have.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Gundy? Okay, we'll move on to Treasury Report, Mr. Gerber.
No report, sir.
All right. And Mr. Fade, Law Director, must still be at his ball game. He's not here. So we'll move on to our Board Commission reports. Planning Commission, Mayor Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Planning Commission will be meeting here in council chambers tomorrow at 1 p.m. And we've got several things on the agenda. Continue our discussion about rental property legislation and House Bill 563, which is covering short-term rentals. Supposedly, the House will be voting on that tomorrow, so I'll give an update to the Planning Commission on that. And if we have time, which I don't think we will tomorrow, we'll continue our discussion on the master vision plan, the city's master vision plan.
All right, any questions for the Planning Commission? Now we'll move on to Board of Zoning Appeals, Mr. McAbeer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board of Zoning Appeals will be meeting tomorrow night here in council chambers at 5 p.m. with 2 variance requests to be heard. I believe it's a much anticipated one with the couple of the items or one of the items that we have on in front of the board tomorrow. So again, tomorrow night at 5 p.m. here in council chambers.
All right.
Thank you.
Any questions for the Board of Zoning Appeals? Move on to Airport Commission, Mr. Seldenwright.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's no report this evening, but we will be meeting tomorrow evening in council chambers at 6 p.m.
All right. Move on to Park Board, Mr. Pace.
Just want to give an update on the Waterworks Park. For those that don't know, on Friday afternoon, somebody had lit the shed on fire that is behind the third base dugout. It is a complete loss, but the dugout is still standing and still usable. So, as many of you know, I run the youth baseball program, so we're going to work there's been a tremendous response from the community, multiple construction companies and donors to see what we can do there. So, outside of city council, that's something else I'll be working on. So, that is that's my report. We're meeting next Wednesday, the 18th at noon at the Park Pavilion.
Did you lose a lot of equipment in the building?
There
as
was,
well?
honestly, there wasn't, there was a portable pitching mound in there, some rakes,
Okay.
a tamper for the mound, so it could have been a lot worse if we lost the whole dugout.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, nobody was hurt, and the fire department responded really quick, because it was, from the picture I saw, it was on fire. There was pretty good flame to it, so they saved the dugout. So we appreciate it.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to Health Board, Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Health Board will be meeting here in council chambers on Wednesday, the 11th at noon, and the public's invited.
Do we need a voice vote on your appointment?
Yes. Would like to ask for a voice vote on the appointment by Mayor Day of Assistant Fire Chief Matt Tharp to the Health Board.
All right, we'll turn it
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenwright.
Yes.
All right, it's been approved. Anything else, Mr. Holland?
That concludes my report.
All right. All right, move into council committee reports. Finance, Mr. Ricklick is not here this evening. We'll move on to Public Works and Economic Development, Mr. Lanzer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Works and Economic Development Committee met at 6:30 this evening. We had 3 items to discuss. The first was the Nature Works grant, which involves the skate park. We, going for a grant for that. We all voted unanimously to have that added to tonight's agenda, and the committee's asking to have that passed on the first reading. The next one is Puritan Laundry land donation, which is also going to be going for a grant, and that's proposed resolution 17, and the committee also voted unanimously to have that put to tonight's agenda, and we're asking that one to be also passed on the first reading. The last thing we discussed was a grant for the stormwater, and that's proposed resolution 18, and it's the intersection of West High and Fourth, where we have a lot of flooding issues, so we're trying to get a grant for that. We voted unanimously to have that added to tonight's agenda, and we're gonna try to just let that read for 3 readings. And that's all, Mr. President.
Any questions for Mr. Lunzer? All right, we'll move on to Safety, Health, and Service. Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Safety, Health, and Service Committee met here this evening at 7 p.m. Here in council chambers to discuss 3 items also. First item was an appointment by Mayor Day of Assistant Fire Chief Matt Thorpe to the City Health Board to serve out the remainder of an unexpired term of a previous Health Board member. The matter was sent to full council, and full council just confirmed that by a floor vote. We also discussed ordinance number 9/2022, which created for fire damaged structures, and it created the opportunity for the city to hold back from insurance companies 10% of the proceeds that would normally be paid to a structure owner, and that amount will be held in escrow. The purpose is to retain sufficient funds that in the event the homeowner walks away from a fire damaged structure, adequate funding would be available to cover the costs of building demolition rather than the burden being placed on New Philadelphia taxpayers. We also discussed ordinance 10/2022, which covers consumer grade fireworks being discharged within the city limits of New Philadelphia. The state of Ohio legislature recently passed legislation making it easier to purchase these high-grade explosives, and thereby creating an unsafe environment for our community, both for citizens and for property. The option for municipalities to opt out of this state legislation was provided for by the state, and ordinance 10/2022 complies with this option, making our community safer. Both ordinances 9/2022 and 10/2022 were passed out of committee for full council consideration and placed on tonight's agenda for first reading. Ordinance 10/2022 was passed out, and it was proposed to pass on first reading, and the rules be suspended. And that concludes my report. We were adjourned at 7:16 p.m.
All right, thank you, Mr. Holland. Any questions, Mr. Holland? Now we'll move on to zoning and annexation. Mrs. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report.
All right, we'll move on to the salary committee. Mr. Seldenwright.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report this evening.
All right, move on to the cemetery committee. Mr. Pace.
No report this evening, but we are meeting this Thursday at 8 o'clock here in council chambers.
All right. Contact and Special Committee, Mrs. Bay.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee met this evening at 7:15 p.m. to discuss ordinance 8/2022, which is basically a typo in the codified ordinances, and it was voted to add ordinance 8/2022 to tonight's agenda and pass on third reading. That concludes my report.
Any questions for Mrs. Bay? All right. Move into visitors' comments. The floor is now open for visitors' comments. Anyone wishing to address council should rise, state their name and address, and address all comments to the chair. See no one. Council comments. Do we have any council members that wish to make any comments this evening? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to our legislative agenda.
Ordinance number 4, 2022, an ordinance by the council of the city of New Philadelphia, Ohio, to increase all sanitation accounts by 50 cents per month. Sanitation account bills mailed in the month of June 2022 shall reflect the rate increase, and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Is there any action to be taken by the council on this legislation tonight? Hearing none, will be held for our next scheduled council meeting.
Ordinance number 5, 2022, an ordinance by the council of the city of New Philadelphia, Ohio, to approve modifications to the non-bargaining salary scale for non-bargaining city employees and declaring an emergency. Third reading.
Is there any action to be taken by council on this legislation tonight? Yes, Mr. Seldenright.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to pass Resolution 5, 2022 this evening.
Do I have a second? Mr. Holland? Oh, Mrs. May, thank you. Any discussion by visitors, administration, council? Roll call.
Mr. Seldenright.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
No.
All right. Ordinance 5, 2022 has passed.
Ordinance number 7, 2022, an ordinance to allocate funds collected under the City of New Philadelphia income tax ordinance for the 2022 fiscal year and declaring an emergency. Third reading.
Is there any action to be taken by council on this legislation tonight? Yes, Mr. Lanzer.
I move that ordinance 7, 2022 be passed this evening.
Do I have a second? Mr. Pace, thank you. Any discussion by community, administration, council? Roll call.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenright.
Yes.
All right, ordinance 7, 2022 has passed.
Ordinance number 8, 2022, an ordinance by the council of the city of New Philadelphia, Ohio, to amend and correct certain specific sections of the housing code in the codified ordinance 1335 due to apparent typos, wherein it appears the number 4 was improperly inserted where there should instead be the number 5, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there any action been taken by council on this legislation tonight? All right, hearing none will be held for our next regularly scheduled council meeting.
Ordinance number 10, 2022, an ordinance by the council of the city of New Philadelphia, Ohio, opting out of House Bill 172 and reaffirming the ban on discharging, igniting, and exploding fireworks in the city of New Philadelphia as set forth in Chapter 1519 of the codified ordinances of the city of New Philadelphia and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there any action to be taken by council on this legislation tonight? Mr. Holland?
Mr. President, thank you. I would move that the rules be suspended on ordinance 10, 2022.
Do I have a second to that motion? Mr. Seldenright, thank you. Any discussion by administration or council? Roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenright.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, rules have been suspended. Mr. Holland?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that ordinance 10, 2022 be adopted.
Do I have a second to that? Mr. Seldenright, thank you. Any discussion by the community, administration, council? Roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenright.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, ordinance 10, 2022 has passed.
Resolution number 13, 2022, a resolution by the council of the city of New Philadelphia, Ohio, to adopt an agreement between the city of New Philadelphia, Ohio, and AFSCME Local 1959 and Ohio Council 8 Service, Maintenance, and Technical Employees Chapter to be effective January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there any action taken by council on this legislation tonight? Mr. Seldenright, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we pass resolution, suspend the rules for resolution 13, 2022.
Do I have a second?
process.
Ms. Alonso, all right. Any discussion by administration, council? Roll call.
Mr. Seldenbright.
Yes.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, rules have been suspended. Now, Mr. Seldenright.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move to pass Resolution 13, 2022 this evening.
Do I have a second? Mr. Lonzer? All right, any discussion by community, administration, council? Roll call.
Mr. Seldenbright.
Yes.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
All right, resolution 13, 2022 has passed.
Resolution number 14, 2022, a resolution by the Council of the City of New Philadelphia, Tuscarawas County, Ohio, authorizing and directing the mayor to submit a grant application to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources through the Ohio Nature Works Grant Program for assistance for public recreation purposes. And once the offer is received, further authorizing the mayor to execute the grant contract and all related documents, and authorizing the City of New Philadelphia to accept any grant money awarded to the City of New Philadelphia, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there any action being taken by council on this legislation tonight? Mr. Lonzer?
Yes, Mr. President, I ask that we suspend the rules on Resolution 14, 2022.
Do I have a second to that?
Second.
Mr. Holland, thank you. Any discussion by administration, council? Roll call.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenbright.
Yes.
All right, rules have been suspended. Ms. Alonso?
Yes, Mr. President, I ask that we pass Resolution 14, 2022 tonight.
Do I have a second? Mr. Holland, thank you. Any discussion by the community, administration, council? Roll call.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenbright.
Yes.
All right, resolution 14, 2022 has passed.
Resolution number 17, 2022, a resolution by the Council of the City of New Philadelphia, Tuscarawas County, Ohio, accepting and approving a real property donation as further described herein, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there any action being taken by council on this legislation tonight? Mr. Lonzer?
Yes, Mr. President, I ask that we suspend the rules on Resolution 17, 2022.
Do I have a second? Mrs. May, thank you. Any discussion by administration, council? Roll call.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenbright.
Yes.
All right, rules have been suspended. Mr. Lonzer?
Yes, Mr. President, I ask that we pass Resolution 17, 2022
Do I
tonight.
have a second? Mrs. May, thank you. Any discussion by the community, administration, council? Roll call.
Mr. Lonzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Seldenbright.
Yes.
All right, resolution 17, 2022 has passed.
Resolution number 18, 2022, a resolution by the Council of the City of New Philadelphia, Ohio, authorizing the City of New Philadelphia to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission, OPWC, state capital improvement and/or local transportation improvement programs, execute contracts as required, and upon award of the grant to accept any grant money, and to authorize and direct the service director to advertise for bid and award bids for the 4th Street Southwest Storm Water Improvement Project, Phase 2, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there any action taken by council on this legislation tonight? All right, hearing none, will be held for our next regularly scheduled council meeting.
That concludes legislation for this
All
evening,
right,
Mr.
thank you,
President.
Ms. Cartwright. All right, is there any unfinished or old business that needs to be brought before council this evening? Is there any unfinished, new business that needs to be brought before council tonight? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. We are adjourned at 8:09 PM. Thanks, everyone.